Hello and welcome to the THOMCAST. I'm Tom, President and Dictator for Life of 515comics.com. And on today's episode, I actually have a project update! A little too much energy there. Go ahead and tone it down a little bit. Yeah. So, like I've said in a previous episode, I'm probably not going to start work on Volume 2 of Nextus until I've actually got some stuff ready for the convention season this year, since that starts up in April. So I've actually started working on some of that stuff so I can talk about it. Yeah! The idea of this project is to have another small book to sell when I go to conventions. Last year I came out with The Hunt for the Ramos Emerald, which is this little book right here. The book itself is 40 pages, and the story actually runs 31 pages, and then there's just like some introduction info and like some ads for 515 Comics in the back, and you know, all that good stuff. So a little 40-page book, black and white, and the idea was to let out something similar to that again, be it another story or just another small booklet that I could sell at conventions for just a couple bucks to get people hooked and interested in the story. So I didn't write a new story or anything like that. So this year it was not going to be another like prequel story or another side story of Nextus. The original idea for what I had came from a friend of mine named Josh. He last summer we were kind of talking about it, and he suggested that that something that would be good to do would be to make a little book that just explains some of like the technology, some of the weapons, some of the different races and like ships and things, you know, just sort of expound upon the setting of Nextus, just explain some of the little minutia and stuff within the universe of the comic, which I really thought was a cool idea. And so that was my plan, is that okay, this year I'll let out kind of a Codex Nextus or something like that, you know, just sort of like you know, just talking about all these different little things that just sort of help develop the world in which Nextus takes place. But last week, or the week before, I started actually sitting down and doing some writing, and, you know, trying to crank out, like, what do I actually want to put in this book? And again, the Ramos Emerald book was about 40 pages long all told, and I want this book to be shorter than that, or at least not any longer than that. Mostly to keep costs down, and also because I don't actually want to write a book. And the problem I was running into is that, you know, it was hard for me to decide where to actually cut it off. You know, what information would be useful to someone who has never read the comic before that would be interesting, and also what would be interesting for people who already have read the comic and are fans of the comic. You know, I'm trying to balance that a little bit. Mostly it needs to be interesting for people who have never read the comic before. And so it was just hard to decide, okay, well then I need to focus on things that really only occur in the comic. One of the biggest things I was excited about doing was talking about some of the alien races, but as readers of the comic know, they don't play a really big part in the story so far. I did just say so far, so that's kind of a hint. But you know, we're 14 chapters in, and you know, there's been mention of the aliens, and we've seen them, but they're really not playing a starring role. And so one of the biggest things that would be cool to do in this project idea was talk about the aliens and talk about, you know, all these different groups that come in and settle on planets like Nextus. And it's just not going to be that useful information for people who are new to the story. It would certainly be cool and interesting, but it's just not really. I felt it would be a little disingenuous to be like to label this and sell this as like a way to get interested in the story. This just kind of gives you an idea of what the story's about, except half the stuff in there isn't actually in the story yet, and there's 14 chapters. So it just seemed like something that the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, this is something that needs to come out after the story gets more established, after, and I think it would be something a little bit more for dedicated fans of the series. And I just, again, this is my second year of conventions, so I don't know that I necessarily have a whole lot of dedicated fans that would be really excited to drop a couple bucks on a bunch of extra information. So had to change that. So I talked with Trey last week, and I told him my predicament, that I was having trouble deciding what should go in this book to keep it kind of short, but also to give it kind of, a purpose. And he suggested, why not just rewrite the about page, from the site. Just take information that people who are reading the comic for the first time might find useful. Talk about some of the startup characters, and basically he just said remake the about page. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, that's a pretty good idea. Now I don't want to just totally lift everything that's already in the about page and put it in this book, because that would be kind of lame. And actually, we've already kind of done that for the book launch party. I printed up a handful of these guys. Let me make sure there's not too much glare on that. So it just says information about next use to search for the ocean shard, and it's just got a bunch of the old stuff from the actual about page, and it's that's all. I literally took screen captures of the about page on the website and printed them out in a book, just of the main cast and some of the peripheral stuff. But yeah, that's essentially what this is. And I've been taking them to conventions and letting people kind of poke through them, but I've not been selling them. And so the idea is to do something like that, but really have it be more of a true introduction to the comic. So I wrote out something. I'm calling it the primer for now. I don't know if it's actually going to be titled the Next Two's Primer, but for the sake of having a name for the project, we're going to call it the Primer. I wrote out a good amount of information. Some of it will be the same information that's on the About page, but a lot of it is going to be newly written just for this. Again, it's not going to be necessary to read for people who don't get a chance to buy a copy, or who have already been reading the series. You're not going to be missing out on a whole lot of information. But for new people, it's going to be stuff that's not available. There is going to be a lot of stuff that's not available online, and it will be a really good kind of intro into the story of the search for the ocean shard. So there's actually a couple things that I ended up writing and working on illustrations for that I I think will probably end up on the About page, because I realized, why don't I have something like this on the About page already? For example, the actual story of the ocean shard. In the first chapter, Randall talks about how it's a fairy tale, and it's something that, only kids believe in, that sort of thing. And you as readers don't know that story, and thus far in the comic, no one's had reason to tell the story. I think that probably the story will get told in the comic, but it's one of those things that it's just kind of like, I feel like that would be good information for people reading to have. What is the legend of the ocean shard? And so that's definitely something that's going to go in the primer, and in some form will probably end up on the About page after I'm done working on the primer. Even the things that I'm pulling from the About page directly, like I rewrote the entries for the Knicks and the Next Two's Planetary Defense Force. Both of those got a rewrite, and that rewrite is going to appear pretty much exactly the same in the primer. The main difference is that there's going to be a lot of different illustrations. On the About page, it's pretty much one image with a text wall, and in the primer, my idea is to break up that text wall with just several small images. I haven't decided yet how long it's going to be. I haven't decided yet whether it's going to be black and white. I'm thinking I want to do a small-sized book like the Ramos Emerald book. We'll see. That's stuff I'm all going to have to decide as I go through. And yeah, so so that's it for the project update. there'll be more as I get more of it done. And yeah, that's it. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.